Hola. Bueno.
Good morning. Welcome, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the industry team of the film festival for creating this space where we can talk about diversity and about LGBTIAQ plus films. And the name of this roundtable is LGBTIAQ plus Label, Distribution and Internationalization of Latin American Films on this topic. And this roundtable is done in cooperation with the 2030 agenda and the Gay Tours in San Sebastian, to whom I thank too. I am Jorge Vañó. I am a programmer and cultural manager in different festivals. I program the Mostra Fire in Barcelona. That's the queer festival of Barcelona city. And we are today going to tackle the challenges and strengths of Latin American films on this topic, and about the role that play distributors and creators and also platforms in this chain. To do this, we have amazing speakers this morning. I'm going to do a brief presentation of each one of them before we start. And here we have Sandro Fiorin. He's a distributor and programmer with over 25 years of experience who funded Distributor of Hira films. Many of us know it because we have exhibited in festivals many of his films. And he's focused on Latin American films that he distributes everywhere, all around the world. And some of the titles that you might know are Pelo Malo, that took the Golden Prize, Concha de Oro here in this festival. And he's also gotten the Teddy Award in the Berlinale for other works. He's been in San Sebastian, Cannes, etc. We also have with us Ignacio Juricic, film director. He studied at the Film University of Chile and his master's degree from Berlin University. We know him from the short film Locas Perdida, who was granted the Queer Palm in Cannes, which is Cannes Prize for queer films, and also his long feature, Enigma, in 2018, in Horizontes Latinos here in San Sebastian. And last but not least, we have Pilar Toro, Marketing and Communications Director at Filmin. This is the Author Cinema Spanish platform. And she was trained in brand and marketing teams at Netflix, and she began her career at Canal Plus and NBC Universal and coordinated social media communications for the film La Llamada. And she also teaches as tutors in IECAM, Mostra Fire, and Atlantida Mallorca Talents Lab. Thank you very much to the three of you. I'd like to start by what the festival told us about, which is the seal. And I'll do a general question for the three of you. How do you see this, the LGBTIAQ plus label? Is this a visibility? Is this a visibility label, or is this linked to the identity? Pilar, you might start. Well, it's many things, really. It's a label that somehow is necessary, and I'm saying this partly as someone who's almost in her 40s and has grown in a world without reference. When I was a teenager, there were no platforms. We were at the beginning of the internet era. And I think that if I had had the chance to watch a catalog such as Filmin, not because I worked there, because that's the biggest LGBTI catalog in Spain, and maybe of the world, I don't know, could be. But I think I could have understood myself much sooner. And I do see that, well, in Spain we are now a bigger platform, but in Portugal, for instance, we are at the beginning of the stage of positioning this platform, and there are many queer audiences that want to approach the platform because we have that label for that content. However, I think it's also important that on the one hand, if you are a person of this collective or not, but if you want to understand this reality, it's just as you could want to understand what's going on in Gaza's conflict or in any other things you'd like to know more about, to have that possibility. But apart from that, it's important that all this cinema goes beyond the label. I mean, if you're watching a collection on big masterpieces of the last 20 years, well, you will have Retrato de una mujer en llamas. So let's keep that label so we can see each other, so we can find each other, but without turning this into a ghetto, because our realities and our fictions must go beyond, must touch other people and discover them for other values, not just the political or social side, but also because of the cinematography. As in any other films, let's use it as much as it's useful for us, but let's not be limited by it. In my opinion, there's a practical side. It's the fact of having a label. Because you know that you have films with that topic, so that's practical. And it's, of course, along the lines of the LGBTQ plus. I mean, there are lots of characters in it, but I think it's good because that means more characters, more diversity. It could seem absurd, but I think it's interesting, really, because it opens up for more possibilities. Anyway, beyond this practical side, I think it's also complex because we don't know what the LGBTIAQ plus side of the film is. Is it because the team is LGBTIAQ plus, or characters are, or the topic is, or the way it's been shot? I mean, that's not practical anymore. So we start to think about questions that are interesting from the cinematography point of view. So what's that label? What does it mean? What are we talking about? And that could be a more delicate field to tackle. I'm sorry because my Spanish is not good. I am Brazilian and this is going to be Portuñol. More than half of our catalog can be classified as LGBT films, but we never choose them because of that. That comes later. The film must convey something, have a human, honest side before being this or that gender. So it's almost a consequence of our sensitivity. And together with Joe, we always look at films that impact somehow, that have either characters or topics that portray queer life. And I am aware of the importance, mainly for film festivals and programmers. There's very important of gay festival chains around the world. If you have chosen a frame line in San Francisco, then 50 gay festivals are going to invite it, and that's fantastic because that makes the movie travel for over 2 years, and many people will have the chance to discover it like that. But that's not our real focus. The focus for us is the story, the quality, how the film was shot, the way characters are played by the actors. And Ignacio was saying that I was telling him that some All of Us Strangers and Under High films are very moving for us. Yes, the characters are gay, but the story goes beyond their sexuality, and Todd Haynes films as well. So first comes the cinema, and then the label. Okay, another general question for the three of you before I go to individual questions. There's a part of specialized film festivals, very much represented today here in this room. So one of these films can go to many festivals. But if we focus on international sales, or we talk about general platforms, do you think this label could be limiting sometimes? There's a word that we use in Spanish. It's like put someone into a little box, right? So do you think this would limit? In our case, I'd say that in filming we are very lucky because our viewers are there generally because they want to understand the world we live in and they want to watch good cinema. So it's a particular kind of spectator. They want to challenge the algorithm or what's fashionable or go beyond things that are simply satisfying or calming. They want to go beyond that. I think our queer channel is one of the most viewed ones, and I think it's a channel that goes beyond the niche. So people like my mother that might watch a film like Nido de Abejas, and not because one of his sons or daughters are trans and they need to understand it, but because she thinks that this is a topic she has not experienced in her environment, but still wants to understand more about it. In our case, it's not a limiting label. It invites you to discover other people's realities that you might not know. The same way you have people who want to watch cinema from other countries, from other realities. It's a space where we have very much taken care of all the films, where you can discover and empathize better with other people that can either be like you or completely different from you. Yes. I think in my case, it's a little bit more fuzzy. I wouldn't know what the queer side of the project is. When you present a project, a film, you talk about it. When the film is done, you show it, and the film speaks by itself. Then, of course, each of us will interpret it differently from our point of view, or we'll see how it matches the label. But for instance, with Enigma, we were talking about this with Sandro. What happened is that, well, the film is about a family. There's a mother. There's a lesbian character. But I don't know if the film talks about the sexuality of that character. It's rather about the family. And the main character is a heterosexual woman. So I don't know if that matches the label so much, really. But, well, in the film, people were saying we must be super clear that this person is lesbian and that she died for that. Otherwise, it won't match the seal. But I think it's complex. Yeah, that's a very clear example for me. This film is magnificent, very claustrophobic. All those women, 6 or 8 women in one house, and always 1 or 2 men max. But we only see their backs, not their faces. And a crime that destroyed the family. The daughter that was murdered because she was lesbian. But that's not the core of the film. It's the search of the mother and how all these women talk to each other within that very small house where they are all tight, close to each other. And this claustrophobia portrays very well what's going on in the outside, the homophobia in Chile. And that's what I was fascinated about. That quest, that search of the mother that tries to understand why she was murdered is very much political in this sense. So I love cinema, and I might overthink sometimes. And I don't think about having a long career and pleasing distributors, buyers, and the festival selectors. No, I always put the quality of the film first. And of course, I suffer with that because with Enigma, I wanted it to be discovered by many people, but we had the kind of feedback I said before, yes, there's not enough gay topic, there's no sex, no romance, and that's what this audience is waiting for or expecting, and I'm not going to. Yes, it's curious. Sometimes it's our own collective who limits the label, what's not the label, right? We always want to have these films where relationships are shown from a more private point of view. Yeah. I wanted to ask each one of you a specific question. We have Sandro here. And I think that here in Spain, even though we share language and cultural spaces, European films are better distributed than one from Argentina, which would be in Spanish. And in the festivals where I work, oftentimes European films, a Nordic one comes with a distributor, and an Argentinian one with a certain topic is not even distributed. And I'd like to see with you, what do you think? What's your point of view? Because that's what happens in Spain. But how are Latin American films sold in the world? Do you see any differences between distributing Latin American films with the LGBTI label or not? Is there a difference? Or, I mean, is this Latin American seal more important than the other one?
Well, it's always been complicated. I've been in this business for 30 years, and it's never been easy. With the streaming, after the streaming hour, great big door, easier door was open. If we don't sell it, we publish it ourselves. We're more self-standing. But after 2 years and a few festivals, if there an opportunity hasn't shown, there's channels like Amazon where you can place it, and whoever wants to discover it, they'll find it. And that is very positive, I think. But we never have had the expectations or focused on selling it and becoming rich. Not it's because it's Latin American or gay, it's because just a foreign film, and it's not Hollywood, and we have to be aware of that, and it's an author film. First or second work. So and then we impose a lot of obstacles ourselves. But I like that because they're Latin American, often gay authors, and there's a niche, and inside a niche, but that's where you find the little pearls that I really appreciate. New talents, subjects that are not popular, not mainstream, that are in Hollywood. I don't want to copy a romantic comedy from Hollywood because they do it really well. So I want Latin American stories that I really can relate to. I can relate to their characters, and I want to introduce them to the rest of the people. That's my mission. That's what I impose myself. Without financial concern, of course, yes, we have to live and make a living, but I never started, I always started thinking I would be something different. I've done this all my life, and I'm very satisfied, and I'm really proud to remain integrate, whole, marking my spaces somehow. But I will have to add that there's more than 100 festivals in Spain, way more than in France, Germany, and there's a Nudo, a Mexican-themed film that was shown in many more festivals in Spain, and that added a lot of people who watched it. So when it turns around 2 years in festivals, well, maybe 20,000 people have watched it. So this is way more than being shown in a theater in Madrid. Yes, we've talked about this sometimes between colleagues. There's some distributors that are more reluctant to give you the film because they think that you're going to burn it in theaters. But there's educational work or a playful side. If you show it in festivals, LGBT festival, the viewers are going to be way more than if you premiere it in a theater. And some distributors can't see this. And regarding our side as festivals, I think LGBTIQ plus is an opportunity not only for specialized festivals, but even for this festivals such as this, where there's recognized award, and well, they have they are kind of forced to have a LGBT plus content, and it helps. And these specialized festivals and all festivals help for a film to be able to be seen, because, for instance, Reas. A film that it might be able to be seen in small festivals, but it might not reach other wider publics. So thank you to all of you who hold festivals. Well, there's also festivals, human rights festivals, women filmmaker festivals, indigenous people, and all this. Well, this happened not only on the queer festival, indigenous, human rights. We just use every opportunity we have. Yeah, diversity is profitable, huh? Yeah, the landscape of festival is huge, and well, I'd like to ask Pilar how you deal with this subject in filming, and we've talked about this with some distributor friends, but because I thought that distribution companies had European Union help, and this is why they distributed more European films, and they said no, there is help for Latin American films, but they are not as widely distributed. Is it more complicated for you? You think? Would you say? Well, I wouldn't say so, because there's the culturals are closer. There's no language barrier. It's surprising, but we are the majority of films consumed in Filmina is dubbed, but we are grown up now, and a lot of people see dubbed versions of films. So a great amount of public, the possibility to see foreign film, but in Spanish, it's a very interesting one. We have had many films like Una Mujer Fantástica, Fantastic Women, or many other films that have worked really well in filming, and they're Latin American and in queer in this case. And maybe there's well, you don't have to pay for a ticket, so there's some prejudices that are overcome. Oh yeah, let's watch a Venezuelan, Chilean film, and maybe the people find these narratives, these stories closer than other countries that maybe not European, but maybe from everywhere in the world. So traditionally, Latin American film has worked really well in filming, and I think it's partly due to the language barrier, the lack of it. You're watching an original film and you don't need subtitles or dubbing, but it's still not a Spanish film, so it's this curiosity and discovering implied. Well, you've talked a little bit about this because you say that the important for you is the story, but I would like to know if, when it comes to creating, you're here promoting your second film. What's your relationship with this label? I know, well, you're a queer creator and you're interested in that kind of stories, but do you let that for after the project is done, how they sell it within the Latin American scene, or are you thinking about this already while you're creating it, or doesn't it affect you at all? Well, I think it goes beyond the film itself in the sense that the work I've been doing since Locas Perdidas, or even before that, is a work. It's kind of a research job that has to do with searching for the story. We use the word queer because it's understood in a wider context. I'm not sure I'm very convinced about this word, but well, maricona or more local words in Spanish. In Chile, I've been working on this, or while I was there, or I've been there for a long time. I've been part of this scene for a long time, so it has to do with who I am, the people I have a relationship with, and this is obviously reflected in my work. So I think it's strange for me to think about a film outside of this. It's like bringing myself out of this project. Of course, my films are going to be Latin American because I am Latin American, and I don't think somebody would think, oh, I'm going to do a Latin American film, unless they are Latin American. So that would be really strange. So I feel, yes, I think that's the way things work, and it's a complex matter. I was going to ask you a bit later, but I'm going to talk about it now because we have mentioned it. So for you, is it the same, the queer label or as LGBT plus label? Because, well, sometimes people, well, I have a story. That's how I started with a platform. I'm not going to say the name, but when I started programming there, there were gender labels and LGBT. I wrote LGBT, and half an hour later, they called me and they said they thought that it was a porno label. This was 15 years back, but well, people, these letters, they're a source of rejection, and when it comes to distribute a film, this can be an obstacle. So, do you prefer the queer word because it gathers more identities, or do you think it's the same? It doesn't make a difference. We have to find a point where, well, to label it, we say, well, it's a bollera, maricona campaign, which are a little bit of pejorative terms in Spanish. But how do you relate with these labels and these different labels? Well, on the one side, I'm going to answer from my activist side, and then on the other hand, from my professional side. On one hand, queer is a comfortable word, even though its origin in English wasn't the same meaning, but with that meaning of insult never reached Spain. We've never known it as that. So it's very comfortable to use it as an inclusive term. It's quicker to say, but I think there's times right now the fight is well, there's a lot of things we have to fight about, but intersexuality is becoming more visible, and I think adding these other letters make us more aware of the fact that it's not everything based on gay, lesbian, trans. There's other reality, and they are precisely queer. And we have to think about them. We have to consider them. So I think that both terms are important in that sense. And the term queer is somehow comfortable because it's diverse. On the one hand, it's positive, but maybe you have to go beyond labels, and the world is not black and white, or not as black and white as what older people think, older 40 people. The younger generations are more open, and because they live their realities. That's why I think queer fits really well, in these days. But I'm afraid of creating invisibility. And as filming, for instance, does my mother or somebody her age understand the word queer? I tested it last year because it's called queer. The label is called queer in filming, but they had like a subtitle that's called LGBT. So it doesn't matter how you look for it, you will find it, because we have to take new steps along with people, because we, as a collective, we have political narratives and speeches that are way look at in the future and that are more groundbreaking, but it's still a place where people that are not as familiar with all this new terminology and debates know about. So I'm not even talking about LGBT or queer. So LGBTI, this is what everybody would probably understand now. Can we leave this label behind and just focus on queer? Or are we doing a mistake and it's not going to be easier to understand? We have to think about the streets, the television, how the queer subjects are dealt with, and then see if we can keep on using it. In my team, there's a lot of LGBTI people working in filming, and that's such a privilege. But sometimes we think that some of the things that we assume as perfectly normal, maybe not everybody's going to understand it. So all the small and big creatures, todas las criaturas grandes y pequeñas, they don't understand that it's queer. So we don't have to lose the point in that sense. Well, I belong to a generation that I feel much comfortable with the gay word, because I lived in the USA for a long time, and it's very, very positive, because gay means happy. I'm gay. I have a gay day. I've never lived it as something negative in any sense. But I'm flexible. If they want to change it and add letters, it's all good. In Portuguese, I'm Diado Bicha. I stole that. There's a wonderful Brazilian politics that say, I'm not trans, I'm travesti, transvestite, because there's the idea of transvestite is like something dirty, and trans is kind of clean, and I refuse to this, because I come from the 80s, and I'm subversive. I'm revolutionary, because I am gay because I go against patriarchy and the rules, but I'm open to anything, whatever is more comfortable for everybody else. Yes, I would like to add that in that sense, I'm pretty much aligned with what Sandro says, in the sense that queer, I understand where it's looking at and what it means, and that it can have more of a dissident or outsider word, or that could be more institutionalized. But in South America, this is This is more well known as the queer theory, very linked to the Anglo-speaking world. So it's not, we don't feel represented by this word in Latin America. And there's a lot of theorians who have a very critical view of the queer concept, because at the end of the day, well, it could, I know it isn't, but it could have like a colony aspect of the experience, like colonization. So that's where Sandro just mentioned the different names, our own names, Latin names for queer, and this word is supposed to be more dissident, but people actually don't know what it means. So there's a lot of critical voices, and I do agree with them, because then it's also, they also talk about how you write it, and I think it's interesting. So talking to about the letters, I think it's interesting that it opens a great deal of possibilities, and only queer is it's a word that comes from the academy. And I remember having a conversation with a trans woman, a 70-year-old Chilean woman, and we were talking about the queer movement in the 60s, and said, well, back then there were no gays, and it's not because there were gay people, but the word wasn't used, so we use faggot and other words, and that's very nice. It's lovely. There's not just one category, there are endless categories, and I would really tend to use that. Yeah. I would like to take the advantage, we're all here, and I have to use the opportunity that we all belong to different festivals. I would like to ask you what you think about, when this LGBT label is taken over by great big production companies or creators who don't belong to our collective, but they do a film because whatever. I would like to know what you think. When is this LGBT label is used by these mainstream platforms in Hollywood? Because my experience in festival or as a programmer is that the reality is not the same in X platforms or mainstream platforms. They show a white wasp gay production, and they forget the other half of this 50%, or there's more stereotype about stereotypes. So what is your opinion as a platform, and how do you see the use these other platforms and distribution companies do of this? Or maybe another platform has taken one of your films and it hasn't sold it appropriately according to you.
I believe, according to my experience, that companies don't have values. People have values. So that really depends on who's in there, on who is struggling and fighting at all levels, what kind of cinema they're producing, buying, distributing. So depending on these people, what they will do with it afterward will be some sort of greenwashing, like washing your face or washing your hands or washing whatever, washing your image in the end. So that in June they can use the flags they want, and Carmona, who's in our team, and so on. Every year we talk about it and say, do we have the right to do a gay pride campaign? And we say, yes, we can, because we have a catalog that stands for this culture, for this community, and we talk about it all during all the year, not just in June. And of course, our identity and activism is present in these campaigns. One of them is, I wish we had seen, met each other before, etc. Well, that's the kind of names we have for our campaigns. But I've worked in Netflix for 4 years, and there's something very beautiful there too. I did some gay pride campaign there, and one of them was called "How Proud I Am to See You Here," and it was outdoors circuit in smaller villages where queer aspects are not so normal or usual, and we used some of the characters we had in our films in the platform. So what do I think about the big platforms? Well, what I think is that when they decide to use it properly, like sex education series or things that are really well as far as values are concerned, they reach the mainstream and homes of people. Heartstopper, for instance, that series is very white character, white people, but 14-year-old guys are watching it, and in my village, and everyone now wants to be bisexual. See? So I'm very, very proud to work on a platform that's home to more dissident movies, but it is also important that big platforms include both people who want to produce, distribute, and promote these narratives, because they have the capacity to reach many people, either from the collective who didn't dare to come out of the closet because they live where they live, and that's not easy, but also to the families. The films like Nido de Abejas, I think that business, I think that the trans reality conquers certain places that for those of us who work in the margins are not reachable. We cannot reach those places. So these little steps make it possible for those of us who are trying to break the ice to keep breaking the ice, while others make those things reaching the mentalities of people years later. Of course, that takes time, but it's much more difficult to get there from the margins, from the edges. And how do you see the future? Because there have been a few years when this films like that were more polemic make people react. I mean, platforms react to the critics, and we see all the diversity shows. I mean, editorial diversity, in the past years, some of them have been fired, or many of them. And this comes a lot from the States. How do you see the future? Are you optimistic or not? Well, I've said many times, and I've seen it happen now, that we can be, we can criticize the rainbow washing or the greenwashing, but I'm not talking about the rainbow washing. But the real terror comes when they stop doing it. When it was interesting for them, and Microsoft saw that the fact of showing the flag, the rainbow flag, made them earn money, which is in the end of the day the only thing they care about, these big corporations, but that makes us be safer, because we become interesting for capitalism. But now there seems to be a shift of trend. And now it's not so interesting because of the political moves that are taking place, mainly at the United States, yes, but all over the world generally. And it seems that now it doesn't really matter if you go against all this. And if you show your flag, some people, instead of simply accept it, they say, well, no, I don't want to be here. I can be homophobic again. And I think that for pressures, for fear, but mainly for money, there are many places where this safe activism that we used to have doesn't exist anymore, because it's not so interesting anymore. And what I'm going to say might be superficial, but I believe that since 2 or 3 years, in the month of June, brands are not participating. And we used to criticize them because they were participating, because that was rainbow washing and so on. And now I'm starting to be afraid. So if the market doesn't want to take part in what we do, maybe society wants to get us rid of what we had already conquered. So attention. The near future is frightening, but not in the representational side. It frightens on the political side. Everything we're losing. All rights are rights we have fought for, and the same way we earned them, we can lose them. And what has been conquered, I think that it's difficult to lose it in the long term. But I think it's also important that those of us who are working outside of the big corporation, of the big influences, to keep being activists, even if it's within capitalism, because that's where we live. But let us try to keep fighting so that those narratives are present. But because this is going to be more important than ever for people at home to have these narratives. And I think everything is mixed or intertwined. And she talked about trends, how they started distributing and communicating films with LGBTI topics, and about the future. I'd like also to know your experience. What has changed in the past years? How have narratives changed the films you see, that you to decide whether you buy them or not? And what do you think about the future? Do you think there can be new LGBTIQ plus narratives in films? As a programmer, and we talk about Latin America too, oftentimes we used to receive Latin American films that were much more, blunter, if you want, when tackling the gay or lesbian topics. They were more daring than the Spanish ones, where we have a legal framework that protects us. So, and they don't. So, I'd like to know, how do you see the future of those narratives? Well, I'm going to answer. There are no correct or incorrect answers. Yes, I don't know if I'm going to answer correctly, but anyway. Sometimes we are seeing as more exotic, and if it's Brazil, you must include samba. If you're from Argentina, there must be some tango. All those cliches that are uncomfortable for me, and that I always try to bring down. Rather than any other labels, it's the idea that for 500 years we've been a colony. We've been different, we've been outsiders, which is not true. We are cosmopolite, we are completely independent, with our own culture and language. The Portuguese we speak in Brazil is just Brazilian, and it's very difficult to understand continental Portuguese because we have had the African and Asian influence, and not in Portugal. And the same thing goes for the rest of the Latin American countries. All the diversity of our diversity is so big that it couldn't fit in Europe. And in Europe, they think, oh, in Brazil, they must have the typical things of Brazil. And Brazil is a continent. I mean, and I understand this because I am a Brazilian. I'm now living there. I've been living abroad for 40 years. And the country has grown so much that, to me, it has become another country. When I go to the Amazon at the north, I really feel that I am in another continent. It's so different from my reality in Rio. So understanding Brazil and Latin America, South America, or in the Caribbean, that's again another thing. I mean, it's so big, so complex, so diverse. And here they simplify too much. They just want that. And I feel that my films who don't talk about what the Europeans imagine to be Latin America won't have space in here because they don't understand. What language are they speaking? Yeah, it's quite insulting. And it has happened that we have screened films from Chile and they say, you have not subtitled it. Excuse me? So I think it is a problem that we have as spectators. And the same way we ask for diversity in LGBTQI festivals, we in Europe must ask to festival programmers to understand the issues of the South American or Latin American label. But that would be a topic for the coming next year, I think. I wanted to open up for questions and answers from the audience. I don't know if you want to ask questions. Don't be shy.
Mira, aquí sí no sirve.
Hola, bueno, ahí va. Bueno, muchas gracias por este espacio.
Thank you very much for this space to the four of you. It's my pleasure to listen to you. You've made me travel with your ideas and your thoughts. Along the lines of the last thing you've mentioned, Sandro, Latin America, Brazil, or the Hispanic world and Brazil, maybe for our Spanish-speaking colleagues, I live in Brazil. And one of the things I always wonder is about the relationship, because excuse me, I'm a bit nervous, so I might not make myself clear. There's a lot of people in this room, and that's intimidating. But when I program this relationship, when I program, I think about this relationship between Spanish and Portuguese. I pay attention to it all the time when I organize cooperations or programming. And maybe we could suggest a journey of ideas between Spanish and Portuguese, and specifically the Brazilian Portuguese. Just some food for thought. Excuse me, I'm so nervous.
Es la geografía de verdad, ¿no?
But it's the geography. Chile is isolated by the Andes, by the mountains. It's like a wall that divides it. And Brazil has the whole coast facing Africa. So it's easier to get to Portugal than to get to Lima, because there's the whole Amazon where there's no one. Of course, no airports. So there's the geography, of course, that plays a role. And I understand now better that to go from Rio to Bogota, I must go to Panama. A triangle. It seems that it makes no sense, but there's not enough people to fill a plane to go straight there. But there are also economic reasons, of course. And now, with the US power, well, I think we are going to have more to sell more to our neighbors. I left Brazil when I was very young, and when I arrived in the States, they never saw me as a Brazilian, but I'm a Latino. I was a Latino, and they wouldn't make a difference whether I spoke Portuguese, Brazilian, Spanish. I was part of that group. Of that racial niche. I'm a Latino. And that was hard. It was complicated for me to understand that. And for a couple of years, I felt bad about it. But then I embraced it and I say, okay, I'm a Latino. And I talk a language that you think it's the same, but it's very different. Not just because it's from Brazil and not from Portugal. The Spanish from Chile, it's very complicated, very difficult to understand. but not the Spanish from Colombia. That's more similar, easier for me. The Bolivian Spanish is very easy for me. But when I go to Valdivia, I don't get a word, and it's from Spain. So, yes. And that's how I started to understand the dimension and the greatness of the continent. When we sell for filming, you must use a neutral Spanish, which is different from ours. That's easier to understand generally. And sometimes one of our Mexican films require neutral Spanish subtitles because it's full of expressions that are typical from Mexico and indigenous too. But yes, I think it's more political or racial than anything else. Yes, we in filming gave the data as Latin America, but I'd like to ask you, how do films travel between markets? Is it also difficult when you have a film from Chile? Or can you export it easily to other territories, to other Latin American countries? Or is it difficult and they just stay there? Because that would be also interesting to see how they are sold, not just to Spain or to European festivals, but how do films move around there? And films like Bicha Travesti, see how it only works in Brazil. Or maybe it's just because of how the character is, that you can also sell it in Argentina, Chile. Well, that film is not a typical one. And hundreds of universities bought it. So it's now being studied by everyone for many things, not just for transsexualism as a documentary. And it was the first one. We were lucky enough to be part of the beginning of all that movement. And Lynn de Quebrada, the main actress, became a star. And we saw how from one day to the next she became a star. No one knew her, and then millions of people wanted to work with her, and that became something much bigger in Brazil too. Novels, reality shows, and so on and so forth. So it really burst, and we never expected that.
The budget was $10,000 with the prize money from the previous award. They weren't gay, but they're anthropologists and do documentaries who deal with kind of subjects. We were completely surprised, but it was the moment and the event of Lynn as an artist, not only as a singer, actress, very political and openly speaking out. And that is the most important thing, because she not only won the Teddy and was invited to hundreds of festivals, but she now is part of the subject program on Harvard, Oxford. So this is the most important thing, and that's the best thing that could ever happen. And for all my films, when they're acquired by university, I think, okay, I've done it well, because they're going to be preserved, they're going to be part of the archives, and students are going to watch them over and over and write about them. Well, the alternative tours, exhibition tours, is something I want to mention, because the independent film is, there's an increasingly more interest in alternative film tours, not only in cycles and shows by universities. Hello, do you hear me? I'm Jose Gil from Mostrafile Film Cells. Well, I was listening to what you were saying and speaking about Latin American distribution of films is already very difficult. We have no support. Ibermedia, there was given out a fund who lasted for a while, but it doesn't last anymore. Now they have a new format, but the budget is very limited, and I don't think it's going to work, in my opinion. But speaking of Latin American film in general, and even more precisely LGBT, Jorge, you mentioned independent theaters. There's just survivors. In Chile, there's a net of this kind of theaters, but they have to work very hard to bring the public. They have no public brought from school, like it's done in Spain, and it's been long been done in France and Germany. So it's a very complex subject. You don't have the support for distributors or for theaters, but you don't have you're not helped for Latin American films in Latin America to make them show in theaters for the public. So in Chile, there's a film who had like 200,000 views on the premiere, but it had no impact whatsoever in Latin America. When a film wins an Oscar award, I think it's premiered in every European film, like Anatomy of a Fall. There's a great structure to support them, and then the countries, the institutions support them much better. And I think this is something that we have to demand, because we're not. There's no cohesion. We're not united. Brazil is like an island in Latin America. I was in Sao Paulo in August, and I was completely amazed by the talent and how willful it is to contact with Latin America, the rest of Latin America. But have you thought about these possible outcomes and solutions to these issues that seem to be too big from my perspective? Well, I'd like to mention the work that the network of independent theaters in Chile does. It's a group of all independent theaters, and I think that work is just a great example. We are so proud of it. For me, this could be an answer maybe that has to do with the community, and we talk about community in a very wide sense. It's really beautiful to see this networking and the festivals we've been talking about. Because they're places where we gather to take films, talk about them, go to parties, to share community, to meet each other and create these spaces. It is difficult, it's against the grain and a lot of things like that, but I see a path, an open path, and it makes sense for me from there. I also think that going back to things we mentioned before, if you want to make a film in Chile or Chilean film and you want to sell it, so go for a more neutral language, and then you wonder why people in Chile wouldn't want to watch it. Okay, so but this happens. Well, I'm not sure what the correct answer is, but I follow one path. There's different ways, but I think that the answer is the community and the work we can do all together, united. Is the microphone working? Well, I'm planning on, now that I'm back in Brazil, I want to do like itinerant Latin American film tours, always bring in Latin American authors, filmmakers to keep a dialogue with Brazilian creators, because most of the Sao Paulo is the biggest festival, the Festival do Rio, but is 90% is films from Cannes, Sundance, Berlin. But there is I'd like to do something dedicated exclusively to Latin American films, to break the barriers, and this is what I'm interested in doing. And yes, I think I'm faithful. It's going to happen, and I've done it in LA before, and it was a wonderful experience. But it requires a lot of attention, and like you say, it's essential to bring these directors, these filmmakers, the filmmakers from the film, the producers, to come to bring them there and have a face-to-face dialogue with them. They're alternative actions, but they work much better than to have a premiere of a film inside a shopping mall, inside a cinema theater in a shopping mall. That's just a total waste of energy. Not only the money, the marketing, it just doesn't work. But it's an event such as the tour, with a talk, with a cocktail afterwards, and a party. It becomes something else. There's a dialogue. The film just grows. I think I always sell optimistic alternatives to break those barriers. My name is Tiago. I'm a producer from Brazil, from the Brazilian Amazonia, and a very different Amazonia to the one that the Brazilians think they know. They have a stereotype from Manaus, and I'm from La Línea, close to Venezuela and Guyana borders, and we're doing a film, and we're in the post-production phase with the LGBT subject, and also with migration as a subject, which is the most candid issue we live these days as a result of the political situation in Venezuela, where 8 million of Venezuelans have just escaped the country and ended up in Brazil. That's our reality in La Línea. We listen more frequently Spanish, and we also have the Guyana very close to our border. And I'm in a very specific Amazonia, but it's also very closed as far as what they expect from Brazil and the Amazonia, and this Amazonia that is so westernmost, near or northern, near the equatorial line. And it's great to hear you say about talk about a possible festival where we could connect, but Europe, all these subjects that have been dealt with today, the USA, they live close to conflict. They live closely live the conflicts, like migration issues, and it's a possibility of connecting in a stronger way through film, and if there's a possibility of creating an impact in distribution, and if you think, well, it's complicated and very long, there's not much time left, but it's fascinating when you talk that area, that region where it's so remote, the border with Venezuela and Guyana. It's completely out of our mind, and it's part of Brazil. We can't even imagine what it is. But I'm very curious about. I would love to spend some time there. It's a totally different Brazil, with a language that is. It's like France, Holland, Netherlands, Portugal, and a microcosmos, completely different, strange, bizarre, but I'm fascinated by it. I would love to discover it deeper and see firsthand what's happening there, what's happening with the migration, that porosity between those four borders. It's fascinating, but I have no experience whatsoever so far. Well, speaking of festivals, what you mentioned is a great opportunity to make it a film more international, with such a specific personal scenario, so unique. When we watch a film, we think a film that is gay in a European city, when the two people feel love, there has to be many other sides to be attractive. If the main plot is maybe is a LGBT character, but if there's to add to that another community and other issues, I think that this specificity and this and telling a new story and having all those layers means a great opportunity to make the project much more international, because even festivals that are as niched as LGBTIQ plus, we do search other stories. We don't want to tell the same narratives over and over again. I think we have time for one more question. Hello, I'm really thankful for this beautiful journey that you've shared with us. I'm a producer of Homer Films. We've been working for a long time. Now we're starting Tras las Siglas in Córdoba, in the middle of Argentina. I would like to thank the word label. I don't think the translation is very good in English, because we just escape or reject the label, because it's not we don't want to be put in a box. We would like stamp or something that is similar would be better in English. Some producers have talked to me, and well, Brokeback Mountain is already done, because a producer suggested me to make a film that was basically the same. We're not going to discuss about LGBT and queer. It's like asking ourselves if the angels have sex. We're just a stone in a shoe. We'll never be comfortable. And the day they feel comfortable with us, it'll be a problem, because we'll still be leaving people outside. So we have to keep going, and we have to please, and we have to be groundbreaking. So let's support from north to south, and let's share stories. We'll share the stories with you, the stories that you can help to consolidate and you can share. It's not as much a question as a reflection, and thank you. Well, in fact, I would like to use this comment to say something that I wanted to say, to advise you to watch a film that is it's a Chilean production, but with Basque help and our participation. The incredible story, The Mysteries of Flamenco. It's one of the best films I've watched recently, and I think it's a good example that reflects what we're talking about. A film with a very special voice. The Spanish language is not neutral at all. There's many gender nuances, but it's a beautiful cinematography. We also like to be advise films, and I hope you don't miss it here, but it will be in theaters, and if you miss it in the theaters, it will end in filming. I hope you can have the chance to see it in a theater, but it doesn't matter if you can watch it in filming either. I think what you mentioned made me think about that film. It's a co-production between different countries. A production company in the Basque Country too. I think we need to build those bridges. We need to help each other not for the queer stories reach other wider audience, but for the best film to wherever it comes from, reach platforms and reach a bigger audience. And we hope that these platforms, such as this festival, who enable them to be shown, we hope that the distributors and the theaters buy these films, and that the platforms are willing to show them, eager to show them, because these are the films that are going to stir everything inside people. They're not recycled, they're new voices, and this is why I invite you, even though it's just a random comment. Yeah, I agree, I absolutely recommend it. There was just one last question, and we are going to close the session. Hello, my name is Lourdes, Cinema Queer Mexico. Well, you just mentioned before, all these conversations have made us think about in different ways. Last year or this year, we were wondering about the use of queer in Mexico, and if spelling it differently would help us to bring it closer to our Mexican roots, and what does queer actually mean for us. And we talked a lot about this when the festival started, and even the media asks us often, what is queer cinema, what does it mean? So this has made us reflect a lot. Nudo Mixteco and La Amiga de Mi Amiga have been there. We're big fans of filming in Mexico. Don't ask me how or why. But my question is also focused about Ansel's group that we absolutely admire in Mexico, and also the role of women, dissidents, different identities, trans, behind the lenses. What is the relevant for you when you're producing, when you're selecting films, when you're doing your distribution plan? Where does this question end? Who are the people telling the stories, and how relevant it is to ask ourselves this question, and who are the people who are here talking about queer people? It's important to give us visibility and to talk and to give the space to trans, non-binary, and et cetera, identities in the diverse landscape of identities and experiences. Well, I think this is very important, what you just said, and the only step that we need in production, and I say this because I think it's important to sell films that have risky voices and that reach platforms and festivals. And there's people here that do project labs, and we need producers, and sometimes they don't have the sensibility, but we need more producers who are interested in this kind of films. But I think in Spain, I'm not sure about Latin America, there's a new wave of producers, and I hope that they will produce the films that we deserve in a few years. Well, Jorge and I, we've collaborated with Fire Lab, and Mostra, we've worked together there. This is the universe more and more of labs, not only queer-specific labs. We need space to give room for queer, racialized, feminist projects, and that helps ICA, ICA, and to be able to have aids, or to be helped on development, to be able to be part of a lab. I've been participating 2 years, and I hope you will invite me again, because there's series and films that are not just interesting by themselves, but that all the people, the professional people who are behind them, that's when you see the melting pot, where the system, the structured system is privileges the filmmakers that also have had a successful career, and sometimes it's very hard to give the first opportunity to these new professionals, not just project, but just the people have the opportunity to pitch their sessions, to be in touch with the industry, and at the end of the day to belong, because there's the queer and also the class barrier. People from the dissident people, they have it much more difficult to have the resources to work in a project for 3 years. I come from a working class family, and now, I am starting to work more in production with ICAM. I ask people often, what do you live from? How do you make your living? How do you pay your rent? So the more you come from a dissonant origin, the more difficult it is to have a base, a solid finance ground base to be able to dedicate this to your work. So that's why festivals and labs have to open their minds. If we don't help push these people up. My friend did a film with 12,000 euros raised with a crowdfunding. So, because at the end, if you have if you're eager to tell stories, luckily these people are brave and that film I was talking about ended up in San Sebastian Film Festival made in Spain. But at the end, you have to ask favors and pay people poorly and work in bad conditions. So I think it's the institutions who have to help to break that barrier, especially at the beginning, when we talk about the first and the second film, because we often talk about this. You do a first film, you're nominated for an award, but then you also need financing for the second film. Well, sorry, I've stepped out of the topic. Thank you, Sandro, Ignacio, Pilar. Thank you, Industrial.